Sunrise came the next morning, but Steven wasn't in his bed but was doing training with Jasper at one of the warp locations. Lion was keeping watch to make sure nothing else would happen and that she wasn't too hard on Steven. "Come on Steven Quartz, you have more power than that?" As Steven got up after a hard blow from Jasper, "Jasper, how about we take a break?" She looked at him. "I guess your body could use a timeout." Steven went to Lion and reached in his mane, pulling out 2 lunch boxes that Pearl had prepared, thinking he was going to have with Connie or Greg. He handed over to Jasper. "There you go, Jasper. I asked Pearl to make something different, so I can see what you like." She was standing up opening her lunchbox. "Understood Quartz." Steven patted the space next to him. "How about you sit next to me?" Jasper sat next to Steven, who had a smile lighting up his face looking at her. "Is something wrong, Steven?" He looked at her with shock and joy. "You called me Steven." She got up and threw away her lunchbox. "I can't be getting relaxed here. I must go back home." "But what's home?" This was Pink's home, she thought to herself. Jasper was lost in thought but felt something on her hand. "What's this?" She looked back and saw Steven holding her hand. "Hey Jasper, why don't you come back and have lunch? We can share." Jasper for the first time smiled at Steven, but only for a second. "Okay Steven." He led her back to their seats and sat down. "So what do you want Jasper?" "I'll let you have the first pick." She pointed out one that seemed to interest her and Steven picked it up with his fork. "Here you go." She was surprised by what Steven had just done. Jasper and Steven didn't move. She reached out to Steven, not breaking eye contact. "Can I touch you, Steven?" He nodded yes as she touched his cheek and he ran his fingers through her hair. They both started laughing and Jasper closed her eyes laughing. Steven moved closer and when Jasper opened her eyes just as he stole a kiss, she looked at him stunned. "What was that?" Jasper's cheeks turned red as Steven sat back down and went back to his lunch. Jasper wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. "It's okay Jasper, you don't have to say anything. I know you don't understand." He looked at her face, confused and vulnerable. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have forced you like that." Jasper looked at Steven, who was also looking vulnerable and nervous. She leaned down and kissed him again. Steven smiled at her. "Steven Quartz, now that you got what you wanted, can I go?" He looked at her shattered. "What do you mean?" She looked at him with a serious grin. "You only wanted to be intimate with me. That explains your behavior." Steven got up raging. "You really think that was the only reason I did all those things with you?" She looked confused and nervously replied, "What was your intention then?" He reached out holding her hand, playing with her fingers. "I thought I could help you live for yourself and not for the diamonds. That's why I was asking what you like. What you want." Steven stormed off, leaving on the warp pad and left Jasper with Lion. "Where is it going?" "Where is he going?" Lion walked to Jasper and knelt down, showing his mane. "Wait, do you want me to get in?" She tried getting in the lion's mane but it wasn't working and she started thinking to herself this would be the perfect time to escape. Jasper looked at Lion and bolted for the warp pad. "I know the kindergarten has a ship I can use." She looked back and saw Lion taking a nap. "What is this guardian doing?" Jasper got to the warp pad and was waiting for Lion to do something. After all the weeks of training with Steven, she almost didn't want to leave. Well, almost. She teleported on the pad, appearing at her kindergarten. "I know there has to be one here, even a small one." Jasper ran around scanning the kindergarten until she arrived at her hole where she came out. "Maybe this is home?" she asked herself. She looked inside and saw Steven sitting leaning in the back. "Hey Jasper, I sorta knew you would come here." Steven stood up slowly, walking towards her and reached out his hand. "Why don't you come in? This is your place after all." She looked around, not yet accepting his hand at the imprinter hole. "Had I remembered the first day I saw this. How did you know this was mine?" Steven smiled. "Well, it's a long story. But I heard you are perfect." Steven reached out his hand again. "So why don't you step inside and tell me your story?" She looked at him with a blank face but held his hand and stepped in. Jasper sat down next to Steven and she began to tell him about the first day that she came out of the ground. "Well, what can I say, Steven? I came out just at the right time." She spoke of how when she came out she was greeted by Pink Diamond herself and she saw me as superior to the others. That moment Pink Diamond spoke to me was my greatest achievement. For her to call me one of her greatest creations, if not the best. Jasper spoke all this about her life with sparks in her eyes, and Steven noticed, just as her story came from one of wonder and happiness, it soon turned to fear and rage. I had no problem being there to serve, protect and fight for my diamond, but then came that fateful day. Jasper looked down with teary eyes the day the report came over the comms that Pink Diamond's guard had been ambushed. She covered her eyes in an effort for Steven not to see her when she is vulnerable. I had been assigned to the ground forces taking on the crystal gems head on at the front lines, but the enemy had gone behind us and took out our lead. She punched the wall with rage and sadness. "The worst part is that they shattered her, but we never got the shards, and when I wanted to avenge her, all of them ran like cowards." She stood up looking at Steven, while they retreated like scared miscolored. "You crystal gems shot us in our backs." She picked up Steven and held him against the wall, revealing his gem. "I'll shatter you just like you shattered my diamond." Jasper started to squeeze Steven's gem and he screamed out in pain. "Stop it, please don't shatter me." The look in her eyes was berserk and cold. Steven reached out to her. "So you think you can attack while you are this weakened? Well, have at it." But he didn't attack her and only touched her hair. She let off the pressure, but a crack had appeared on Steven's gem. He fell to the ground and passed out as his gem began to glow. A portal appeared behind her as she was looking down at Steven, not knowing what to do. Should I help him? Should I shatter him? Out of the portal, Garnet stepped out and Jasper hid. Lion sensed Steven's gem shattered and came out of a portal of his own. All the gems had arrived and were all looking for Steven, sensing that his gem had sent out a distress signal to the others, but the signal was weak. Jasper started to run towards the warpad but was punched into the side of the mountain by Opal. "Give me Steven." Just as Jasper was trying to get back up, she is struck down into the ground by Garnet and an arrow from Opal leaves a crater around her. Meanwhile, in the background, Steven's gem signal is fading and the gems can detect it. "What have you done to Steven? I swear that if you hurt my Steven I will shatter you." Jasper looked back and also felt the signal from Steven's gem fading. She crawled slowly towards Steven but was too weak to speak. As Jasper crawled, she is hit with a powerful knee to the ribs by Garnet and she continues to pound on her. Opal tries her best to pull back Garnet. "No, Garnet, calm yourself. If we want to find Steven we need her alive for now." Lion appeared before Steven and lifted him by his shirt but looked over at a weak Jasper with the gems, thinking of what to do with her. Steven woke up and saw Jasper on the ground in pain. "Lion, go get her now." Lion jumped through a portal, and whilst the gems were distracted on what to do with Jasper, Lion silently took Jasper away through a portal.